Well, hello, I'm John Kinzer, and I'm here with you for Faith, Culture, and Society. It's great to be with you. It's Thanksgiving Day, and we're excited to tell a little bit about the holiday in America, but really, what is Thanksgiving Day? How did Thanksgiving Day happen? Well, in 1620, the Pilgrims have sailed to Massachusetts, and they landed there. They were way north of where they thought they would be, but their ship put ashore there in Massachusetts, and on November 9th, they went ashore, and there was no opposition, there was no danger from any Native Americans. They were worried about that. They were concerned. They heard that there were attacks. Other groups that had come to America had been attacked, they had been opposed, but no sign of any Native Americans, no Indians in sight at all, until March of the next year. So here we are in March, and in 1621, the Pilgrims see their first Native American. He walks up to them and says, "Welcome, Englishmen." And his name was Samoset. He had broken English. His English was not good, but he knew some English words. And he talked about another Indian whose name was Squanto. And Squanto had very good English. And he told the Pilgrims that in peace, he would introduce them to Squanto. So this starts off with a great camaraderie, a great friendship with the Indians, the Native Americans. And truth to tell, Squanto, the Native American, taught them how to farm, how to plant corn, how to put fish on top of the corn and provide moisture so that the corn would grow. He taught them about dyes, dyeing their clothing. He taught them about plants that they could eat. He had much instruction for the Pilgrims. And he actually, in my belief, saved the Pilgrims during their time there in Massachusetts. That's right. I think the Pilgrims would not have made it without Squanto's help. That's how important he was. He was a member of the Wampanoag tribe. Now, that first winter in 1620, the Pilgrims lost about half their number to sickness. And even with Squanto, of course, they had not met Squanto yet, but the sickness and the disease had lost about half of their number. There were about 102 Pilgrims that landed, and about 50 remained. But Thanksgiving came in the following October. So how did that happen? Well, it happened because of a devastating drought. It did not rain for about 7 weeks. And God answered their prayers. And I'm going to read the selection that I've chosen today that's from William Bradford. William Bradford was their second governor of the Pilgrim colony. And Bradford wrote a tremendous book. If you get a chance to get a copy of this book, the name is Of Plymouth Plantation. I'm going to put it on here and so that you've got that name. His name again, William Bradford. And the book Of Plymouth was first published in 1647. It's the first history of the Pilgrims. Of course, they landed in 1620. Listen to what he says. "I may not here omit how, notwithstanding all their great pains and industry, and the great hopes of a large crop, the Lord seemed to blast and take away the same, and to threaten further and more severe famine unto them by a great drought that continued from the 3rd week in May till the middle of July without any rain, and with great heat for the most part, insomuch as the corn began to wither away, though it was set with fish, the moisture whereof helped it much. Yet at length it began to languish sore, and some of the drier grounds were parched like withered hay, part whereof was never recovered, upon which they set apart a solemn day of humiliation to seek the Lord, by humble and fervent prayer in this great distress. And he was pleased to give them a gracious and speedy answer, both to their own and the Indians' admiration that lived amongst them. For all the morning and the greatest part of the day, it was clear weather, and very hot, and not a cloud or any sign of rain to be seen. Yet toward evening it began to overcast, and shortly after to rain, with such sweet and gentle showers as gave them cause of rejoicing and blessing God. It came without either wind or violence or thunder, and by degrees in that abundance as that the earth was thoroughly wet and soaked therewith, which did so apparently revive and quicken the decayed corn and the other fruits, as was wonderful to see, and made the Indians astonished to behold. And afterwards the Lord sent them such seasonable showers, with an interchange of fair, warm weather, as through his blessing caused a fruitful and liberal harvest, to their no small comfort and rejoicing. For which mercy, in time convenient, they also set apart a day of thanksgiving. This being overslipped in its place, I thought it meet to insert the saying. Well, what happened? A great drought hit 7 weeks, and it was broken the day they set aside to pray. And so it astonished the Indians. It caused great rejoicing. And later, there was such frequent rains that they had a liberal and good harvest. So the Wampanoag tribe was welcome. They had a 3-day feast. There were games. The tribe came. They played games for 3 days. They ate food for 3 days. In fact, the Indians even showed them how to make popcorn, which is a fun thing that we all enjoy. What kind of food did they have? Well, one author says the English gardens of the day probably produced cabbages, carrots, cucumbers, collards, parsnips, turnips, beets, onions, radishes, lettuce, and spinach, fennel, anise, and dill. So many different spices. Wampanoag and English women also cultivated beans and squash, including pumpkins. So pumpkins, kind of a symbol of Thanksgiving, was one of those common foods. And then, of course, later in the United States history, in 1863, Abraham Lincoln declared a day of Thanksgiving each year. It would be a national holiday. And of course, the rest is history. I think the lessons that we learn from this are many. One thing, God uses drought to accomplish his glory. The clear way that the pilgrims turned to the Lord in prayer, we see their character, their Christian beliefs. And then Thanksgiving really is a day that we celebrate God's care for us. Clearly, God used those Wampanoag Indians, the Wampanoag tribe, to bless, befriend, and instruct the pilgrims. Without them, they probably would not have had a successful colony. So it's really thanking God for all of them, and how he, in his providential hand, the fingerprint of God was on those people. God bless you as you teach and enjoy Thanksgiving.